What's up there, Workforce? Chris here with Work to Game, and I'm actually about to sit down and do a quick, I guess, like interview collab with a friend of mine, Zach, that plays World of Warcraft, and Brian, you guys know him, who plays Final Fantasy, and we're just going to compare and contrast things. Okay guys, so we're going to go ahead and start off here, and we're going to go ahead and introduce, Brian, why don't you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what you're playing lately, and everybody else knows you other than that.
It's like, hi, I am Brian. You might not recognize my face, but it's all good either way as my voice cracks. What I'm playing, Pokemon Quest right now, just a huge addicted to that game. Namely, I guess it's feeling a kind of a Pokemon-esque gap in my life. It's not on the DS, so it feels way more comfortable to play. So that's what I'm playing. Final Fantasy, got my Samurai to 70. And now we got to pull up. If you guys haven't seen, asking what job I should level next. The 4 options are Bard, Ninja, Monk, and Dragoon. So that's what's up. So that's what I'm working on. So it's 14 and Pokemon right now.
And what about you, Zach?
I'm Zach. I am actually from Portland. I am here visiting for a little bit of time, so you might see me around giving Chris donuts in the morning. And let's see, what have I been playing recently? I have been playing a lot of Stellaris recently. They just released a new DLC, which adds a bunch of story content, which has been fun. I like to play the Eliminators and eliminate all life from the galaxy. And I've been playing some Hyrule Warriors on the Switch, since they just released a remastered version for the Switch. And what else? Some Slay the Spire. It's been a very interesting roguelike card game that has occupied way too much of my free time.
I want to know just a quick question on the Hyrule Warriors. What's your takeaway from that? Because obviously I skipped the Wii U, and now that's out on Switch. I loved the it's based off of
It's a Dynasty Warriors.
Dynasty Warriors.
It is,
but it's Zelda.
It's got the dumbest storyline of all time.
Okay,
but that doesn't take away from its charm. In some ways, it adds to it.
Okay. But is it worth something that is it worth picking up either as a Zelda fan or a Dynasty Warriors fan?
I would say yes. It's if you like kind of point control games where you have to go and accomplish an objective and do things, and you're kind of controlling the flow of battle instead of overseeing the entire thing or like moving individual warriors around. It's a lot of fun. It's I would describe it as a great way to waste some time if you have nothing else better to do.
Okay, that's good to know. Good to know. That's all I wanted to hear. I was just like, oh, that looks really cool. And then Chris said he was playing it with you. I was like, I don't have time for another game right now.
It was very fun to jump into his game. So the reason I brought you guys both here today is you guys actually fill kind of the same role in my life for 2 very different MMOs. I have played WoW for a ton of years with Zach, and I've played Final Fantasy for as long as Brian's been able to convert me. And I've gone back and forth between the games. I play them both, and you guys both have a large amount of knowledge. You've both tried a lot of raiding. You've both dabbled in PvP. And so honestly, when I get stuck on something and I'm too lazy to go to Google, I can usually ask whichever one of you for the game I'm playing, and you know the answer. So I'm going to start off, and we're going to talk about a topic here.
Okay.
And one of you is going to get 2 minutes to kind of talk about that topic and expand on it, and then there's going to be a lovely timer, and the other person is going to get 1 minute to kind of respond to that and see if there's anything that they find interesting about that or how that relates to their game. So
okay.
I know you both have tried the other game, but actually for today, Brian, you're just talking about Final Fantasy XIV Online.
Okay.
And Zach, you were just talking about World of Warcraft Legion going into battle for Azeroth. So I know you're kind of pulling double duty there because some systems are actually on their way out. Because you're kind of in the switching seat, which alternates every year. So to start off, we're going to jump with Brian, and I actually just want to know, if you just met somebody who'd never played Final Fantasy XIV today, what is your favorite thing and your favorite part of Final Fantasy XIV Online?
I like, for me, it's definitely the story, but that's something that speaks to me. But if I was generalizing it and I didn't know the person that I was talking to, it would absolutely be the accessibility of the game. Do you like a keyboard and mouse? Check. You can do that on PlayStation and on PC. Do you like a controller? Are you somebody who wants to sit back and have a more relaxed approach to the game? Check. You can do that on PC and PS4. So if you also then have preferences on controller, you can play with a PlayStation controller, an Xbox controller, or any kind of third-party controller. So you're really got a lot of versatility. And I think that's something that brings the game to it. Now, if I knew that you were somebody who really likes story, who's a real big Final Fantasy fan, I would lean into the story aspect of the game and how it really does a lot of fan service. It really kind of connects these games that have happened in the past, not directly, but in ways that really kind of pay homage to and honor the games that came before it. If you weren't somebody who was into the story in and of itself, I'd bring up the fact that you have the various job systems, you have a lot of ways to play, you have a lot of content to come through, and that in and of itself would be how I would sway it.
Okay. Plenty of time left on the clock, so we're going to actually shift that time over to Zach, and you're going to get to say, kind of, is there anything he went over there that you feel is different for World of Warcraft that you would say to a new player coming in that really draws you to the game when you find yourself dumping a ton of time into it?
So, for World of Warcraft, if you like stories, it's definitely the game for you. It's 100% the game for you.
Wait a
It's
minute.
exactly the game you should be jumping into if you really enjoy a well thought out, fleshed out story
Your
that
body
has nothing
language.
to do with space aliens or demonic entities literally shoving a sword through the world or anyways. So I think the one thing about World of Warcraft that's really made it kind of accessible to anybody coming in is actually its art style. And that sounds like a weird thing to pick out, but their art style in World of Warcraft has been something that's stood the test of time for a very long time now and remains accessible. There's no real question for you when you're going out and fighting in the world, doing whatever, that, hey, that's an enemy, or hey, that's an NPC with, a gigantic yellow question mark over its head, or hey, this is where I want to go for my next quest. And, part of that is not just the way things look, but also the way they design the world so that you continuously have a good flow from zone to zone. And I think also to the gigantic modability of the user interface is a very big... I don't know if I describe that as straight accessibility for somebody new to the game, but for somebody who might have like a vision impairment, or who, like for me, for a while, I had meningitis and encephalitis in college. I could not see the left side of my screen. And so with a modded UI, I was able to move everything over to the right side of the screen that was important so I could continue to play the game. And so just things like that, it feels like... I don't want to say that it's more accessible than Final Fantasy, because that's definitely not the case. But it does try to target a different aspect of accessibility.
Well, perfect. So, jumping back over to Brian, since you guys are pretty much on equal time, Final Fantasy has a deep crafting system, has done incredibly well with their music, their story is known for their beauty, but honestly, we're kind of in a mid-expansion cycle right now. And so one of the things that Final Fantasy is showing more than usual is the size of content patches. Where do you feel that they are relative to the previous expansions as far as the amount of content they're offering in a mid-cycle?
So that's a really interesting question, because I think it ties into when you look at what we've gotten in Stormblood being the latest expansion with the Ultimate series, and then obviously the crafting and gathering Beast Tribe, the Namazu that just came out. Before in Heavensward, it was just crafting, and they kind of left out the gathering piece of it. So I'm happy to see them bring that in. I'm happy to see them bring in Ultimate, and I feel their quality. So not their quantity, but their quality has risen in all the fights and the design and the raids, which is really appealing. I feel the quantity has taken a step back, and I'm constantly personally looking on the horizon for that trade-off, because it is the undertaking that they deliver consistent patch cycles with with the really interesting things to do in it, both expanding on the story, adding in new dungeons, adding in new raids, but at the end of the day, I'm still kind of looking forward to Heaven on High, because when we're recording this, Heaven on High hasn't dropped, and that ends up like putting it right on par with where we were with Heavensward, minus a dungeon or two where we were getting 2 per cycle. Now we're getting 2 and then 1, then 2 and then 1. And then as that then relates again back to the ultimate, there is that trade-off. I'm happy to see it, but also at the same time I'm left wanting all this content that we were, sitting on top of, to see a refresh, to see a way that it's brought back to prominence. And that is something I felt was needed in Heavensward. We haven't seen that yet. We're still needing it here, but they are making moves in that degree, especially when it comes to cross-world servers. That really is going to be the defining thing. They kind of did that at the very end of Heavensward, and they're continuing to expand it and improve upon it in Stormblood. So honestly, hopefully that answers your question. I think that they're on par. They could do better, but it's not like a knock on what they've produced so far. All right.
Right on time. And so I'm going to put just 1 minute on the clock here because I want, Zach, you to talk a little bit about how much content do you feel is really delivered on a per patch basis as opposed to being front loaded at the beginning of an expansion. Just explain the content release schedule for people that maybe aren't familiar with World of Warcraft.
Ooh, that's a tough one. So that's something that's actually changed quite a bit expansion to expansion. I think they've kind of settled on a release cadence with this expansion that they're planning on sticking with for at least the next expansion, okay, for a cycle or two. And it seems to be working very well for them. And essentially what that is we release the initial world, which contains, a large set of dungeons, a initial raid, and a content cycle that allows you to explore the world and see and familiarize yourself with the zones that are released in the expansion at large. And then with the future patches, they add additional raids, but they're doing them on a kind of an offset cycle. So the patch will land, which will introduce a new zone and a bunch of new content. And actually, in the case of the most recent expansion, the first one of these patches actually modified an existing zone to add a bunch of content. Then, a while later, being 2-3 months later, with data already in the patch, they released the raid, which then gives you another 2-3 months of content to go on while they prepare the next set of patch data. And when they release that, you get a new zone, an outdoor world, new dungeon or two, and you get to experience, more of the outdoor world content. And then after, 2-3 month wait, you get the new raid. And they did that several times, and it seemed to work pretty well. I think the hardest part of it for them was pacing with the artifact weapons and how that tied together with the patches.
Okay. So both games honestly do have a lot of content. And one of the things that really impressed me when I came to Final Fantasy at the time was that mid-cycle content, as opposed to WoW, if you were not a raider, could feel a little light after you cleared the expansion. But it sounds like that's gotten a lot better. In my time back in Legion, definitely feels like there's a lot more to do. Zach, my question for you is, if you're not into the in-game progression, if you're not into doing the most current patch cycle, it's something that both games have a large population that does. What parts of the game do you feel best add replayability to uniquely WoW that allow you to just dump an unlimited number of hours in, even if you don't want to do the end game content?
Alright, so let's go from the most casual level to kind of more hardcore level. And this is specifically excluding endgame raiding, because that's, yes, that's definitely hardcore, and we are going to talk about the hardcore level a little bit, I think, in my answer. But that's the most coordination-intensive activity that you can do in World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy or any other online game. So, at the most basic level, I think there are a lot of really cool new things that World of Warcraft has released, which are like puzzle mounts, where you have to go out and explore the world and do like a huge sequence of events. And not just in the new zones, but the new zone, the old zone, you're going all over the place. One of them, you're playing a mini Jewelcraft game until you meet a specific set of criteria. And then you're doing this crazy convoluted maze, which, well, it may have added a few gray hairs for me. And once you complete this, you get this really awesome black demonic unicorn mount. And, you know, they have a number of other things like that in the game that you can do. So it's not just the unicorn mount. There's also PvP. You know, it's not that hard to jump into an immediate battleground match with, you know, a friend or two or by yourself. And if you want to take it up a notch, right, you can do the raided battlegrounds, which requires a lot more coordination, but is quite a lot of fun. Or, you know, your arena teams where you want to get into that 2v2, 3v3, 5v5 PvP and, you know, go for serious stakes. And then I think one of the other real fun activities is Mythic Plus. Mythic Plus is a dungeon system that they released this expansion that allows you to take on the dungeon challenges that are available on a hard difficulty, but scaling. So much like if you've played Diablo, much like Diablo's Torment levels or Rifts, right? You start a dungeon at Mythic plus 2, right? Which is, you know, pretty easy. Everything gets a bit more health and damage, and, you know, you've got to actually watch for the mechanics maybe a little bit. And it goes all the way up to, you know, whatever number you can go to. Plus 15 is where you get the largest set of rewards. And at that point, we add 3 new affixes. Bosses are much harder, and the content's a lot more exciting. So, you know, if you want to find a group of like 4 people to play with you, I think Mythic Plus is a great way to experience some really replayable content with a good group of friends without having to go to the difficulty of organizing a raid.
And so, Brian, back to you. With the same amount of time, what do you feel adds the most replay value to the game, excluding level cap, like in-game hardcore content?
I think obviously to start off, you have the various roulettes in which that it kind of matches you into various different types of content, so that as a 4-man, you can easily kind of jump in. You can get some rewards that kind of help you progress as far as in-game gear goes with whatever the current tombstone might be. And then as the expansion moves forward, that becomes a little bit easier. You have you know, like depending on, I guess, your playstyle, I would say Eureka might be a good place for you. It's not necessarily as end-game, but there are definitely some challenges there, and it can take up a lot of time if you really like farming on mobs. Then you know, outside of that, you have crafting and gathering. You have leveling your other jobs as a part of your one character. So you feel like you could really get invested in the world of Final Fantasy as a player, as a character. And if you don't want to take part in the economy, not a big deal. If you don't want to craft and gather, not an option. You know, not anything you need to worry about. But then you have like you know, Palace of the Dead, that has an endless dungeon. You've got the Heaven on High coming up. You've got PvP, so you've got basically a MOBA with the with I can't even the Rival Wings. I was like, why am I drawing a blank on that? You've got Feast for your arena, and then you've got Frontlines for your kind of, you know, large scale multiple teams trying to control different areas, etc. So it's like they have a lot of things going, and all of those can either reward you with experience so that you can use those to level up alternate jobs, or they can just be something that you want to participate in as far as the game goes and progresses in and of itself. And then, and so we talked about the crafting and gathering, and the last thing I would say is treasure maps. Like, treasure maps seems to be a huge fun piece of content that can offer ranges of challenges, but it's also something that kind of then loops in the gatherer's piece of it. So whether you're gathering or you just want to go buy your maps, you can just get a group together if you want and just go and see if you can't get those things to spawn, because it is a random chance. And then it is something exciting. It's kind of feels like you're in a casino, which is a lot of fun.
Perfect. The timer was just about to go off. So
He's
Zach,
better at the timer than I am.
As we prepare, he might do this. He might have done this a few times.
I might have a YouTube channel that I sit on. Now, I wish I was better at it when we do the podcast, because it's like, well, we planned for an hour, and we're in hour 2.
That's really the only reason I have a timer at all. I'm not super worried about it. So, Zach, as we prepare for an expansion, right now you're taking a break, you're playing other games and things like that, but we know there's going to be a significant number of changes between Legion and Battle for Azeroth. What are you most excited about as far as changes upcoming?
You know, that's hard to answer. Mostly because I haven't really logged as much time in the beta as I should have at this point to kind of give you a good answer to that. I would say offhand, based on what I've read and what I've experienced right now, the Heart of Azeroth, which is the replacement for the artifact weapon leveling system, looks very interesting, and it looks like it's going to be a very good replacement for artifact weapons that patches over a lot of flaws that the artifact weapon system have, while preserving the essentials of what made the system really kind of cool. I think another cool thing that's going to be in the expansion, at least I'm looking forward to it, is the new Battlefronts, which is kind of PvP, but it's really PvE. Essentially, it's like you were playing Warcraft 3 or one of the other RTS games, and you are the heroes on your side, and you are, you know, building buildings like your town center or your barracks or whatever, and getting your hordes to push against the NPC army on the other side and to win. And so that seems like a very interesting and creative take on, you know, battleground and PvP instance content that I think will be very exciting. And then, of course, there's the new islands feature that they're doing, which should be very interesting. It looks like they're going to be like 3v3-ish microzones that change dynamically each time you go to them, so you never really get the same thing. And it's not even just like, and by change dynamically, it's not like the island terrain is going to be different, but like the NPCs that spawn, they're going to be different. Or if you're going for PvP mode in then you're going to get, you know, different treasure chest spawns, different combats to fight, things like that. So
perfect. And just before the time, you're getting the hang of this. Now, Brian, there is a ton of content that we expect from an expansion, and we're in the middle of the expansion. We've kind of talked about how 4.3 is actually when Stormblood finally feels complete. We have everything that we expected an expansion to have, and now it is just running its course. Is there anything that you think that you hope surprises us in the 4.0 series, or you feel they're setting us up for when we go into the 5.0 series next year?
Well, story aside, and not to get into spoiler territory if people haven't played it, I think how they ended 4.3 story-wise actually starts to set it up in an interesting way. Because it's like, well, what are we doing? There's been this looming threat. And then now we're finally starting to tease that. We're starting to, you know, and that's where I'm excited to go, you know, story-wise, lore guy. As far as it goes content-wise, what I would love to see in 4, it's a hard question to answer because I could go on for days of what I want. And so for me, I've kind of set expectations for 5, for the expansion. And, you know, when I look at it, I say they need to look at what other games have done really successfully. Guild Wars 2 has world versus world PvP. That's kind of like where it's a PvE and a PvP element, and it's server versus server. Love to see something like that in this game. Then I look at the Mythic Plus system that Zach was talking about, and I'm like, yes, they need that. We could call it Savage Plus. I don't care, but it's just the way that we have like 63 dungeons in this game right now, and I'm playing 3 of them. You know, it's like, well, how can we take those dungeons? Let's level them up. They don't even have to be all 63, but to be able to say, how can we make all this content that we've made, and then we don't have to spend a huge amount of development resources in, so that way it's relevant and it's fun and it's rewarding, and that's really where I want to see the game go. And the final thought would be, I want to see more gamification of it, leaderboards on PvE. I've even called for, like, I'd love to see seasons for PvE. We have seasons for PvP, and I love it. I love to be able to see how far you can get and what you've done, and then it's tracked, and then you can say, hey, do I want to try it something better? Diablo 3 is a great game to look at for any inspiration regarding rifts. We have a system, Leaves, that's underutilized that could literally be the backbone for that as we go forward. Now, all that, I think that content is, you know, big content, right? So, expansion content. However, anything they can do within the existing would be great.
4 seconds to spare. So, Zach, I know you've played Final Fantasy before. I believe it is currently installing on your laptop so that you can play a little while you're in town. And what is it that you feel that World of Warcraft could learn from Final Fantasy? What is it that you think maybe Final Fantasy does a little bit better or a little more uniquely in its own flavor that you'd like to see World of Warcraft either learn from or take inspiration from in their own way?
I don't think this is something that Final Fantasy does a little bit better. I think this is something Final Fantasy just blows World of Warcraft out of water. And it's the crafting system, the crafting gathering systems. They're much more unique in Final Fantasy. I think they're much better designed and significantly more interesting to play than in World of Warcraft, which, I mean, honestly, the World of Warcraft system wasn't really built to be really, I guess... What am I trying to say here? I think what I want to say is that the World of Warcraft system was not really built to be you know, a portion of the content itself, but more of a way to continue to do existing content, right? So you need to build your nature resist gear to, you know, do Encourage, or to do tanking in Serpent Shrine Cavern or something like that. And so you just go out and you do the farming and you do the crafting so you can get that done, versus Final Fantasy, where, yeah, I mean, definitely you can use the craftables to do things. It's very much a more fleshed out, playable system, right? Like, I can go and have fun doing my crafting versus have fun doing my dungeons or leveling.
Well, perfect. And with plenty of time left on the clock for you, Brian, what is it that you most envy about WoW that you feel Final Fantasy probably already has the backbone for, and it wouldn't have to be a direct port, but that they could actually do something new and different that takes the inspiration from?
Oh, that's... I would love to see, you know, what they do with PvP, with Battlegrounds, with Arena, with bringing in those different statistics. I love statistics, anything with that. I love that you can kind of track all these things. I think, you know, there's a lot of things it does well, but when it comes down to it, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but the Mythic Plus system in and of itself makes me extremely jealous for that, because I look at it, like I said, I'm playing the same 3 dungeons, but I love that when you look at games like, you know, even Destiny as a bad example, they have a weekly kind of thing. Like, what is the thing for this week? It's the modifiers on this, and we're going to make a challenging of this. WoW kind of has the same kind of concept. Diablo 3, again, like, brings up the whole Rift, and that idea as an engineer, I love it, because it's that if you build it right and you have the modifiers, I don't have to go design unique encounters. I can just mess with you. And if you can't clear it, no big deal. We also have all this new content we're making. But they do spend, Final Fantasy spends, I think, a lot of time right now investing in new fights, and people get them, they learn them, and they run them into the ground, and then they're like, what's next? And it's an insatiable monster. You can't feed all of us players in any game at the rate in which that we consume content. So you need to have dynamic content, and that's one of the things that I think Final Fantasy has to adapt and learn from WoW and from other games that have successfully pulled that off in any degree.
Perfect. You guys are definitely getting the hang of this. So, as our last thing here, Zach, if you have a person that's saying, you know what, I am on the verge of playing the game, I like everything you've said here, I think I'm going to play WoW, what do you feel makes it worth it? What makes it worth the purchase price, the subscription? How much time do they need to be willing to put in, and what do they need to be looking to get out of it so that they can say, okay, that's what I'm getting in trade for the money?
You know, honestly, the most important thing for me for World of Warcraft is not really any of the game mechanics or the game itself. And this is going to sound so trite and just so, like, I just pulled this out of a fortune cookie. But it's really, for me, it's been all about the community. I have been with a very special community that I played World of Warcraft with for 8, 9, 10 years now. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we're all very good friends, and we have a lot of fun, and sure, some people unsubscribe. In fact, I think something like 75% of us are not subscribed at this moment, or more. But we still have a lot of fun when we do play, and it's not just this game. It's not just World of Warcraft. It's other games, right? And just having a really cool community to kind of dive in and play a game with, I think, is what makes World of Warcraft, or any other game, really awesome. Mm-hmm. If you made me pick something in World of Warcraft specifically, though, and I restricted it to this expansion, I'd say the Mythic Plus system has been amazing. I have easily spent thousands of hours doing Mythic Plus and have not gotten bored. So,
make it happen, Square.
Well, very good. So it seems like Mythic Plus is the theme of the day here. And so Brian, as you look at, I know you've converted a substantial number of people to this game. So what is it that you feel makes an expansion worth it? How do you judge whether or not Stormblood was a step in the right direction when it is all said and done?
I look at the content, and honestly, right now, if I was gonna score Stormblood in the step in the right direction, I'd give it a C. And that is namely because it feels, for me, as a longtime player, very samey to Heaven's Word, which I loved Heaven's Word. I'd give that an A+. But that's from a lore perspective. I love stories about dragons, so everything had me hooked, and I was hungry, and I've been playing in this zone since 1.0, so 1.0 to 3.0, I'm finally going to these areas that I hadn't only heard of, and I'm like, what do they look like, and how amazing is this going to be? And so I just ate it up. And then when you go into Stormblood, it's like, oh, okay, this is new areas, and this is a story that, you know, there's some interesting things, and personally, it's not resonating 100% with me, but I'm yet still enjoying it. So then, as I look at it as a whole, as I look at it, you know, to answer kind of the core question of, like, you know, what would I say would be the purpose, or how would I continue to evangelize this game? And I would say that, you know, is Stormblood a step in the right direction? And I think there's systems underneath that are definitely the step in the right direction, but they need fleshed out. Eureka being the best example of it. If I look at Eureka and I say, Evangelize, hey, are you an 11 player? Are you into that style of grind and camp farm, right? Well, yeah. Well, we have a system like that. We have a game type like that. Oh, is it perfect? No, and that's where I'm saying, like, they're setting up some base stuff that I see that's really good. When you look at Eureka, I think it's better than the Diadem. So, like, if I was going to compare feature to feature of Heaven's Word and Stormblood, Eureka blows it out of the water, but I'm still not yet satisfied as a player. But that doesn't mean that it's not good content and there aren't people who are happy with it. Hopefully that answered the question.
Perfect. And so that is really it. You guys have gotten to touch on a lot of things. Is there anything you'd like to say in closing, either one of you?
I think there's one thing that I think Brian and I can both share, and it's our most common response when we're playing any of these MMOs with Chris, and it's, did you read the quest?
Or you mean, can I do that? Like, yes, you're gonna have to reset your password when you go to another IP address.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, thank you both for your time, and maybe we'll do this again.
I hope so. This was a lot of fun. I really like the questions, so appreciate it, Zach.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm looking forward to playing some 14 with you soon. And if WoW would bring controller support native, I've done Joy to Key. I have tried. I would love to see that as an option. So that would be something that I'd love to see. Because I'd go back and play. I'd play Guild Wars or any other MMO if they brought in controller support. Just because that's where I'm home. Anyway, that's what I got. That's my thoughts.
So that was it. It was a new format, kind of changed as we went. Hopefully you guys liked it. Let us know in the comments below what you'd like to maybe see different, what you liked about it. Hopefully that was something that was interesting. Maybe one of those games was something you didn't know a lot about, and this kind of shed some light on it. This has been Chris with Work to Game. Thank you guys so much for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.
Hey you! Especially if you're a new face, welcome to the workforce. If you want to hit that subscribe button to say you like us, we'd really appreciate it. But there's a little bell next to it if you really like a channel, and you can go ahead and hit that if you'd like to be notified. Be sure that if that thing lets you know, hey, do you always want to be notified, or you just sometimes want to be notified, that you tell it, oh man, I actually meant by notified. So why don't you give that a click, and we hope to see you around in our next video.